Welcome back to Lean Six Sigma Green Belt Training, Define Phase. Today we are going to talk about SIPOC. What does it mean SIPOC? SIPOC stands for S as a suppliers, I inputs, P process, O outputs, and C as a customers. SIPOC is a very powerful tool, and the value of the tool is to understand not only the process inside, but also what are the inputs to the process, what are the outputs out of the process, and what are people involved on both sides. The value of the SIPOC is also to understand what is the customer expectation about our process. So what are the requirements delivered by the customer? What is the voice of the customer? So let's start analyzing SIPOC and preparing SIPOC from the customer point of view. So look at the customer and think about your process, look at your project charter and think who's the customer in your process. How to define customer? Customer is everybody who's waiting for the result of your job. So when you look at the project charter and your process, think what are the result of the process and who is waiting for the result. So now you have a customer. The next part of the SIPOC is outputs. So outputs is what the customer can see, and customer can feel the differences in outputs. So for example, if customer orders a pizza in a restaurant, the customer can see what is the difference in waiting time, what is the difference in how the pizza looks like, but the customer has its own requirements. And the requirements are related with outputs. So when you think about your process, think what are the outputs of your process. It's very important that you have these outputs well defined and also requirements around the outputs. To make it simple, think about the pizza. So if the customer wants to have a pizza, usually the customer knows what are the requirements around the pizza. So what is the size of the pizza, what is the pizza type, all the information. And the same about your process outputs. Please look at your process and try to understand what are the outputs. And use the template for the SIPOC from the website and list the outputs. The next part is process. So what does it mean process? The process is a set of activities that transforms inputs into outputs. The process has a beginning and ending point. The process has its own frequency. So now look at the process described on your project charter and try to define what is the starting point of the process and what is the ending point of the process. The same with the pizza preparation. What is the starting point for preparing the pizza? What is the ending point? Is the ending point the moment when the work is done in the kitchen, or is the ending point the moment the pizza is on the table, or is delivered to the customer? So please be very precise what is the starting point of the process and what is the ending point of the process you are going to include in the SIPOC and in the project. When you think about the process, usually customer doesn't see the process. Usually customer can see the output of the process. So very often is that customer is not involved directly in the process. And looking at the process from the customer expectation, look from the output point of view. So what is the output the customer is given as a result of the process? But to start the process, we need to have inputs. How to explain inputs? What are the inputs? For me, inputs are everything what is needed to be put on the table for the process to start. So if you want to start your process from your project charter, think what you need to put on the table for your process to start. Think about all required items. Maybe it's an IT system, maybe it's like a procedure, maybe it's a tool, maybe there are some prescription how to do some process steps. So think about all the inputs. When you compare it to like a simple process of pizza, if the customer defines that the output should be margarita and has 40 centimeters, you are very clear what is the process and you are clear what are the inputs needed for the process. So think about the requirements related with inputs. There's like a statement that defects in inputs leads to defects in outputs. So if something is not working here, so if the input is not as it should be, or as it's defined by the requirements, the process and the output is not done the way that is expected by the customer. So think about the inputs to your process and think about the suppliers. Suppliers are the one that are delivering the inputs to the process. So for pizza it can be, I don't know, tomato are delivered by the shop or like some farmers. Think about your process. Who are the suppliers? So who gives you the inputs to your process so you can start your process? Think about the inputs and the suppliers the process cannot start without. For example, the input can be approval or the access to IT system. And who is the supplier of the input? Who is the supplier of the approval? So who is basically the approver here? Think about the inputs and suppliers that way. Okay, so why we need SIPOC? What is the value of SIPOC? When you think about the problems from project charter, you define the problems. Now you can allocate the problems on SIPOC. So please decide now if the problems that are on project charter are related to the process on P, on the SIPOC, or maybe they are related with the outputs or inputs. Please make sure that you can allocate all the problems listed on the project charter on the SIPOC here. What is also important is about requirements. Requirements are about inputs and outputs. Try to be very precise here. Try to bring some numbers. Try to understand the requirements from the customer perspective. It's so important. And the last step, when you look at the process, is to think about the voice of the customer. So what is the voice of the customer? For example, you can ask the customer about the current state. What is the current state of the process? Is the customer happy with the process? What is the expectation? If, for example, a customer orders pizza every day, and you can measure later on how many pizza are meeting customer requirements, and look at your objective, project objective. For example, your project objective will be to reduce the number of defects, and defect is the pizza that's not meeting the customer requirement. As the customer, what is your expectation? Or how many pizza during the month you can accept, even if they are not meeting your requirements? Because maybe when you look at the data in measure phase, it will appear that there are like a 5 out of 30 that are not meeting the customer requirement, but the customer requirement is to have only one during the month. that is not meeting the requirements. And in this case, you are very comfortable. What is your project goal? So what you are going to achieve in your project? You are going to reduce the number of defects from 5 to 1 on a monthly basis. So it's so simple. And please keep it short and simple. So it's very important, as it is your first Lean Six Sigma project, that you keep things short and simple, because it's so important that you understand the flow: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Okay, so we are done with SIPOC. Feel free to send me your SIPOC. I'm happy to review the SIPOC and give you any support if you need it. And the next step is about the process map. We are going to take the P process out of the SIPOC and create the process map. Thank you very much.